when we look at our past, we go through countless experiences, don't we, as this personality in which our thoughts and our feelings so frequently have us. You know, we're so tied up in that personality that we're just a slave to the self, really, in being entrenched in being identified as that self, knowing nothing other, and just, you know, moving around the ground of our lives and the world we inhabit and the relationships and the communities and the time we live in and the politics and the economics and all of it, you know, and we're just like, we are like a lone wolf, aren't we, trying to navigate the terrain of doing in order to find sufficient experiences of being, you know. As we've seen, you know, most people, by nature of daylight, there's a human habit, isn't there, to sort of get home at the end of daylight and spend some time relaxing before resting. Life is divided up between, so, for the most part, 8 hours of being at home and awake, 8 hours of being asleep, and 8 hours of working. You know, and those portions contain the presence to different peoples and the presence to different roles of our lives and the presence to different characters. And naturally, that's the world that we're in, and, you know, unless we go off grid or unless we open an ashram in Nepal or unless we find sufficient financial security that we can live some lavish lifestyle. And let's be honest, from what it seems like, those people don't do too well either, do they? They seem to suffer quite a lot, mostly from the fear that their, you know, seemingly unlimited financial security is going to evade them one day. As I used to say, you know, the woman or man driving around in the van doing 1,000 deliveries a day is doing so in order to get home at the end of the day and know what Bill Wilson of AA called perfect peace and ease. And the millionaire who, you know, has $1 million or $2 million is still working on how to get another one in case the other two run out. You know. And in this way, we place our happiness in external things. We place our happiness outside of ourselves. By the movement of different things outside of ourselves, we aim to bring about, by investment in that, by ever creative plans, an internal sense of being. You know. Here, as we say, you know, we go the other way, don't we? We turn the mind in on itself and go, well, just there, go there, you know, the direct path. We point straight there to the back of it, what we might call the back of experience, or before thought, prior to feeling, in what are all of these things coming and going and happening. And what we discover when we get there is that even this personality, this approved and disapproved of personality, is a concept and therefore an object that rises and falls to the sense of beingness. So the character of doing, attempting to bring about a sense of wholeness and contentment and beingness, which is to desire to bring about its own absence, as we discover, is actually happening in the beingness that it's seeking. And the only thing that veils the beingness that it's looking for is all of its activities to try and bring it about on its own resources. Incredible paradox. And, you know, for many of us as sincere spiritual seekers, and, you know, through necessity having to do lots of work to discover what it's all about, or like all people, everybody's searching for truth, even if we think truth is sitting comfortably at home at the end of the day. Everything is a search for truth, even in the moment. You know, we want to, as we walk down the road and we're having a mental narrative about something or other, we're trying to bring about, but through that simple thought activity, a sense of control in the moment about the situation, about who we are and how we're relating to that moment. So to set all of that aside and move by this direct pointing to our very beingness, to the stillness in which all of those ideas as thoughts rise and fall, well, you know, it seems at first a little unsatisfying. Which is why I love the word ordinary. You know, this is something that came through when I used to meditate as a person. I went to Amravati near Hemel Hempstead, the Buddhist temple, and the teacher sat there. He seemed like he'd nodded off, to be honest, but he sat there for ages as we all sat on our cushions, being meditators. Well, I was being a meditator. And then he seemed, I don't know if he woke up, but he brought, you know, he arrived in the presence of what was happening, and he said, and he moistened his lips, and he said, meditation is not difficult, it's just ordinary. I was like, yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's so radically ordinary. And the one who craves excitement, the one, you know, if we sit as a thinker trying to meditate, if we sit as something that is bound by excitement and feeling and a sense of energy and tension and vitality and essence, like, you know, the self wants the best flavors in every second, every moment, doesn't it? So to point as a self into radical ordinariness can seem, and is, to that sense of self, the egoic personality, very bland. So here we're kind of embodying that radical blandness, aren't we? And we're, you know, I mean, my life story, you know, I've had every thought there is imaginable, as I've said before. If someone can think it, someone's out there doing it, whatever it might be, which is why there's so much shadow in the world, you know, because once human beings can become so identified with their own thoughts, we can create war, we can create abuse, we can create trauma in the lives of others. And all of that starts as a simple, prosaic thought that appears. And when the thought is appearing and happening to me, and then I believe that thought is mine, I develop an attitude about the thought. And if that attitude at the time is that I like this thought, or this thought is preferent, is something I prefer, as opposed to not thinking like that is something I don't prefer, then I enact a behaviour around the thought, and I act on the thoughts, don't we? And this happens like that, you know. There is evidence now that thought is beginning neurologically 6 seconds before it happens. But to us, as there is with me now, and as Paul alluded to earlier, when we speak through the meditations, it's not like we practice what we're going to say, is it? Words just fall. It just falls. So I think there's room to develop and learn about that. But, you know, to be centered, as we do in centering prayer, if we use that technique, you know, which is why when we last met as a tribe in Nymphsfield in Worcestershire, you know, I talked a lot about, as much as I could, in fact, about not coming to the retreat as the thinker, feeler, doer, and perceiver, and sitting in a meditative practice, trying to be silent. You know, I came there with the pointer of, you know, let's go by the direct path straight to that essence, what is essential to the moment, this that we inhabit, is that radically ordinary, vast, relentless emptiness. Because there is nothing to do, and there's no one to do it in the end, as we saw. There's just this, as it is, without objects, without anything to prove. No one's doing it any worse or better than anyone else. And there's nothing here to do any worse or better than anyone else. The common experience of all of us is that this right here is radically rich and invigorated just the way it is. And that has to be love. What else is it but love? Objectless vitality, the sheer profundity of the very ordinariness of it. Ordinary love, but this is no ordinary love.